Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is from the south. Venezuela's Minister of Communications has revealed new destabilization attempts coming from Colombia with the alleged goal of assassinating President Nicolás Maduro and other high officials of the Bolivarian government. According to the minister, an arsenal of weapons was found inside a vehicle along the Colombian highway between Barranquilla and Rio Hacha.
Pero ni siquiera.
Not even after these difficult days that Venezuela is going through have they ceased their attacks. I want to highlight two events that our security forces investigated that have revealed the conspiracy against our government. Do you recall that in social media they started a campaign that March 23rd will be the darkest day for Venezuela? Well, they had this planned already. Assassination attempts by placing explosive devices. They want to create chaos during a time when we're all trying to fight COVID-19.
The president of Venezuela confirmed 7 new cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday, raising the total number of cases to 91. The president also highlighted recent calls by global leaders to lift sanctions during this pandemic.
I want to inform you that 7 new cases have been confirmed, putting the total number of cases to 91. But luckily, there hasn't been any deaths in Venezuela, despite some patients being in critical condition. There is a growing global awareness that rejects the blockade and the criminal sanctions, and we will continue until all the sanctions are lifted, at least during this pandemic. We were all talking about this, discussing it with legal and political experts, judges, and diplomats. The European Union has issued a very positive statement regarding this issue, as did the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the whole United Nations is taking steps so that sanctions are lifted against countries like Venezuela.
The Association of Caribbean States hosted the first extraordinary meeting of Ministers of Foreign Affairs and the Health Association of Caribbean States on COVID-19. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez was among the participants of the video conference. He said that the rapid spread of the disease requires uniting wills to develop joint actions of cooperation. The Venezuelan Health Minister also took part in the conference, echoing the call for unity.
We took part in a video conference with the Association of Caribbean States, in which member nations shared their experience dealing with COVID-19. Our experiences differ, but our intentions are the same, to cooperate with ideas and personnel, following the example of our Cuban brothers and sisters, who sent medical brigades to wherever there is need for them.
Trinidad and Tobago's borders remain closed until further notice, as the country has 60 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 2 of which were transmitted locally.
To date, as I speak now, we have tested 370 samples. Of that, we have 60 positive tests. Of those 60 positive tests, it must be emphasized that 41 of those 60 tests have come from one source, that is, those individuals who went on the cruise, which thus leaves us with about 3 tests which were positive from those cruise ships passengers who came in before. Therefore, it means that of that, we have very limited exposure to possible community spread at this point in time.
Jamaica's Minister of Public Health welcomed 140 Cuban medical professionals to support the island's efforts against the novel coronavirus.
I want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to the government and the people of Cuba for being here and for sending this 140 healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, therapists. I think this is great for the fight against corona here in Jamaica, and we really appreciate the support, as usual, of the Cuban government and the Cuban.
Moving on to the United Kingdom, our correspondent Owen Doherty has the latest on the spread of the novel coronavirus.
As the United Kingdom registered the biggest daily rise in the number of deaths related to the COVID-19 virus, with 87 people dying on Tuesday, bringing the total number of deaths to 422, the news dominating the national headlines was that Prince Charles has contracted the virus. Now, while we wish the Prince a speedy recovery as he self-isolates in his Scottish castle, an important question needs to be asked. Why is a 71-year-old man who was apparently displaying mild symptoms being tested while tens of thousands of National Health Service staff are not? Now, speaking in Parliament, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that the UK will increase daily testing from 5,000 to 25,000. However, he said the exact same thing last week, and right now the number of tests being conducted daily is just 5,700. What's become clear here in the United Kingdom is that while anyone can contract the COVID-19 virus, right now only some people have access to the necessary testing.
We thank Owen for that report. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. The governor of Sao Paulo in Brazil has said COVID-19 is not a little flu, but a serious matter in response to President Jair Bolsonaro's attacks on containment measures launched by local governments.
So, President, in a respectful way, it's not a little flu, it's not a little cold, it's a serious matter. We have 46 victims so far, and we have not even gotten to the peak of the crisis.
As infighting builds inside Brazil's far-right administration, citizens are continuing their calls for the ousting of President Jair Bolsonaro. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Muir, has the details.
Last night, Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro made a 5-minute address to the nation that was aired on national TV during a nationwide protest in which people were coming out onto their balconies and banging pots and pans and yelling out with Bolsonaro. During his address, he attacked the governors for creating lockdowns and quarantines, saying that this is a scorched earth approach towards what he referred to once again as a minor flu. Bolsonaro said he believes that people should be allowed to go to work, that it's bad for the economy. In other words, he's contradicting all of the advice of the World Health Organization and health authorities around the world. Immediately after he got off the air, The Intercept Brazil released leaked information from ABIN, the Brazilian intelligence agency, which estimates that by April 6th there might be 5.5 thousand deaths already in Brazil, that the public health system is going to be overflowing by the second week of April, and that President Bolsonaro has been ignoring this information. So this morning, amid rumors that Health Minister Mazella might resign, Bolsonaro and his team held a teleconference with the state governors from the southeast, and a shouting match began between São Paulo Governor João Doria and President Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro called Doria a demagogue. Doria accuses Bolsonaro of sending out conflicting information and confusing the people and exacerbating the crisis. So some commentators are saying there's a climate of civil war growing between the governors and the presidency over the handling of the coronavirus crisis in Brazil.
That was Brian Muir in Sao Paulo. The streets of Brazil's major cities are becoming more and more empty as citizens begin to self-isolate.
Businesses in Brazil's 26 capital cities and the federal district are closed as a way to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus.
The measures to close businesses and schools are meant to help us resist and confront this health crisis.
Hospitals, pharmacies, supermarkets, and suppliers considered to be essential remain active.
I work in an area where we must take care of people. We can't stop.
Sanitation is vital to fight COVID-19, but all around the country there is a shortage of alcohol and masks.
This is very difficult. I haven't found anything and no one has a clear answer.
While citizens do their job at fighting the pandemic, they also reject the far-right president's actions, like his announcement to allow business owners to suspend salaries for 3 months, a decree later revoked due to popular pressure.
Everyone is angry. We understand that economy will suffer, but I don't think that this is the right thing to do. In Venezuela, they did exactly the opposite, and it is forbidden to fire people until the end of this year.
On the other hand, Bolsonaro has spoken about the dangers of hurting the economy, which according to him can be more harmful than the pandemic. This has been rejected by health experts.
Sadly, there are some entrepreneurs, religious leaders, and state officials like President Jair Bolsonaro that have been very irresponsible. They have ignored health authorities' orders. It is necessary to be united. We must follow a common path together.
In a country ruled by the far right, people wait for authorities to apply policies to stop the coronavirus and to prepare for the coming economic crisis.
Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord has reported the first case of the novel coronavirus in the war-torn nation.
We report on this day, March 24, 2020, a first contamination with the coronavirus in Libya. We insist all citizens abide by the necessary measures instructed by the Ministry of Health and National Center for Disease Control.
Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered the nation to go under curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. in an attempt to curb the novel coronavirus, while also announcing a massive pay cut and unveiling tax breaks to ease the economic impact of the crisis on citizens.
This shall be in effect in the territory of the Republic of Kenya, with all movement by persons not authorized to do so, or not being medical professionals, health workers, critical and essential service providers, being prohibited between these hours. To offer the following immediate reliefs: an increased disposable income to the people of Kenya through a 100% tax relief for persons earning a gross monthly income of up to Kenya shillings 24,000. But more importantly, today we have registered our first patient who has fully recovered from this virus.
One of the few countries in the world that had been spared from the novel coronavirus, Mali, has now registered 2 cases. Hospitals in the country's capital have been trying to, in recent weeks, to prepare themselves as best they can for the pandemic. In the district of Point G, an abandoned building has been transformed into a containment center with 7 beds. But the Ministry of Health says it only has about 50 ventilators for the whole country. The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has declared a state of emergency and ordered the isolation of Kinshasa to avoid the spread of the novel coronavirus. The country has so far registered 45 cases of the virus, including 3 fatalities, all in Kinshasa.
In view of the seriousness and the dangerous nature of the situation, I am declaring a state of emergency, taking into account the security situation that currently prevails in our country in relation to coronavirus pandemic. I have decided to take the following additional measures, which are of immediate application: prohibition of all travel from Kinshasa to the provinces, and from the provinces to Kinshasa, in order to allow the containment of the city, the source of the pandemic.
Guinea-Bissau has recorded its first 2 cases of COVID-19 as Africa now has well over 2,400 people infected with the virus.
Guinea-Bissau has 2 confirmed cases of coronavirus since last night. The government is moving forward, and the President of the Republic will shortly create the necessary conditions necessary to deal with this situation.
With just hours to go before a total lockdown in South Africa, citizens brace themselves for a time of uncertainty. The total number of infected people has risen to over 700, as the health minister warns that the lockdown itself is not a sure fix, but a measure to slow down the rate of infections.
This was the scene last night in Long Street, a popular tourist hangout in Cape Town. By 8 p.m., most of the restaurants and bars have closed down. Early this week, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a 21-day national lockdown that will start on Thursday at midnight.
Individuals will not be allowed to leave their homes except under strictly controlled circumstances, such as to seek medical care, buy food, medicine and other supplies, or collect a social grant.
The National Defence Force will also be deployed to support police in enforcing the lockdown. As the countdown begins towards the total lockdown, food vendors in the city are concerned about the economic impact on their business.
It was very short notice, so we cut off our stock also now. So our supplies is taking a knock. It's a lot of people involved, you know, when it comes to the shutdown. Not only me as an owner, but also my staff, my supplies is taking a knock.
It's going to impact it to an extent which we can't even foresee. So that's why I'm here in town actually to meet up with a few traders also to discuss what we're going to do going forward.
Those involved in the minibus taxi industry are equally worried.
If the government decide that close down, that the taxis must close down and the buses must close down, I don't know how I'm going to support my family.
Government promised some financial relief for small businesses affected by COVID-19 outbreak. But owners will have to prove a link between the challenges they face and the virus. I'm standing here on the Grand Parade in Cape Town, one of the iconic sites in the city. And usually the space here behind me is filled with street vendors, people selling their goods. But as you can see, it's quite empty. And the reason is because the city issued a warning or a notice to the street vendors that they won't be able to ply their business here for the next 21 days. As Johan Abrams for Telesur in Cape Town.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur. Welcome back to From the South.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has postponed a vote on proposed constitutional amendments. The vote was scheduled for April 22nd. However, Putin said a new date will be set based on how the coronavirus pandemic develops.
The absolute priority for us is health, life, and the safety of people. Therefore, I think the vote should be postponed to a later date. We'll assess how the situation in the regions and generally in the country develops, and based on the professional opinion of doctors and specialists, we'll take a decision on the new date of the vote. Next, it is essential now to prevent the prompt spreading of the disease. Therefore, I declare the next week to be non-working with full pay, meaning the holidays will last from Saturday, 28 March, till Sunday, 5 April.
Meanwhile, Russia is building a new hospital on the outskirts of the capital as the government has reported 658 cases of the new coronavirus, 410 of which are in Moscow. The buildings will measure close to 70,000 square meters and are designed to accommodate more than 500 patients. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have made a joint call to suspend debt payments from the world's poorest countries. The statement reads, the World Bank Group and the IMF believe it is imperative at this moment to provide a global sense of relief for developing countries as well as a strong signal to financial markets, adding that their decision will help with IDA countries' immediate liquidity needs to tackle challenges posed by the coronavirus outbreak. In the U.S., the White House and Senate leaders have reached a deal on a massive stimulus package that would see $2 trillion injected into the economy to prevent a recession. The deal includes $500 billion for a major corporate liquidity program through the Federal Reserve, $367 billion for a small business loan program, $100 billion for hospitals, and $150 for state and local governments. It will also give a one-time check of $1,200 to citizens who make up to $75,000, as well as to individuals with little to no tax liability.
So, Madam President, help.
A team of 14 medical experts from China's Fujian province have departed on a charter flight to Italy to aid the country's fight against COVID-19 outbreak. The professionals specialize in areas of respiratory intensive care, infectious diseases, hospital infection control, traditional Chinese medicine, and nursing. They will share their experience with local hospitals, Chinese communities, and students in Italy. The Ministry of Endowment and Religious Affairs in the occupied Gaza Strip has ordered the closure of all mosques for a period of 2 weeks as a prevention measure to curb the spread of the pandemic.
This is a very sad thing. The houses of God are empty of worshippers. The greatest thing is praying in this time at the mosque. The government and the Ministry of Endowments issued a decision telling people to pray at home, to protect them and their children from this pandemic.
The war against terrorism in Syria and the blockade led by the U.S. and the European Union are the main obstacles that hinder Syria's national preventive campaign against COVID-19.
The government of Syria is sparing no efforts to guarantee accessible prices for medicine, face masks, disinfectants, food, and other basic goods. An effort that clashes against the coercive measures imposed on Damascus that are a violation of human rights and international humanitarian law.
We call on the international community to pressure the U.S. to lift sanctions imposed by the people of Syria. We need to implement all possible preventive measures to protect the citizens from this pandemic.
There are people that work for a daily income, and under these circumstances, they can't work anymore. That's the population that's most affected, and in order to help them, it's essential that the U.S. lift all sanctions. That way, we will be able to overcome with the least amount of lives lost.
Social discipline and joint efforts between the government and citizens are the main factors to overcome the effects of the blockade during this pandemic. In spite of the sanctions imposed by the US and Europe, Damascus trusts that in the same way that it defeated terrorist forces, it will be able to fight against the coronavirus.
The goal of both the government and citizens is to stop the spread of the pandemic. We are sure COVID-19 will be kept under control, and we hope that the one case that has been confirmed is able to recover very soon.
The curfew in Syria will start at 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. and will be in effect starting Wednesday, March 26. According to authorities, their measures do not seek to limit citizens' movement, but rather prevent the probabilities of the virus spreading.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesperenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.